Recordings in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Platoon, Platoon, Module 6, React, Week 16, Day 2. It is September 12th. Yeah. And we're going to get into state and conditional rendering and also state and conditional rendering. Do y'all know what I'm talking about when I say that? Do you have any idea what those things might mean? Why is it called React, Joyce?
Because it reacts to the code. I don't know.
What? All right, that's fair. Not so much the code, it's more the user. We've got different types of sites. You got static sites and you've got reactive sites and all kinds of other sites. But React reacts to changes when they are used properly when doing state. Did that save my changes? Oh, I didn't come down. No, I didn't. So what React does is it builds out a virtual DOM. When you do stuff like, this looks like HTML, but it ain't. What is this? What is this, Philip?
It's JSX.
Absolutely. No, you're right. So React is serving what looks like, I don't know, it's serving a DOM. It's serving a virtual DOM. We're telling it what to create within this return. It outputs this, but it is JSX. It is basically templatable HTML. This is very similar to like what Jinja can do within HTML documents and lots of other templating things. But this is going to be more common. Jinja is very popular. You'll see a lot of Jinja when it comes to templating, but this is how React handles it. JSX is its method. There are other ways to template in other frameworks. I don't know what they call it, but like Vue and Vuex and gosh, what's the other big one that is skipping my brain right now? Brain's not working. There are a lot of other ways to integrate code into your HTML. React does it this way. It creates a full-blown return function where you can create things that look like HTML and for the most part operate like HTML, but you will see subtle differences. And you'll see that a lot when we get a little bit deeper into this and you start blurring the lines and you start looking up how to do something in HTML. It doesn't quite work exactly the same in here. That's when it'll start to bite you, and that's why learning to do things the React way is a little. I mean, it's not exactly the same as HTML. Not that HTML knowledge doesn't mostly transfer over, but as we get deeper and deeper into this, it's going to stop acting quite as much like HTML and won't be quite as readable as HTML. But that's why they call it React, because we're going to make state changes. Oh, that's not why they call it React. Let me back up. They call it React because we're serving a virtual DOM. We can interact with that immediately by changing state. State, think of it like a variable, but think about it as it's a variable we never affect directly. We're going to create some variables, and then we're going to attach callback functions to them, and that function can be passed forward wherever it wants. But whenever we interact with that function, it's going to kick off a bunch of changes and immediately cause the DOM to re-render with the new information. That's how state works. We'll explain it a little bit deeper. As a review, a React component is a reusable building block. It encapsulates its own logic, state, and rendering. These components are then combined to compose the final user interface. You could very well create a 70 million page, line, file in app.js, and you'd be good to go. Or you could break it out into components so they can be reusable, make it dry, easier to work on, things like that. That's what components are for. And when we kind of get into state and we get into conditional rendering, it's going to make even more sense and be more complicated. So great. state. With your understanding of components, I need to pull that out and not props. You can now create reusable components. However, using just props, we can only create static React apps. I forgot to peel it out from the gosh darn text. We're not talking about props today. Props is passing things on. We're not getting into that yet. We're working at just right here, just within this page, just within the confines here. To make our apps more dynamic, we need state. State allows us to update internal data and trigger updates on the user interface based on these internal updates. So React provides us with some functions or hooks that allow us to add extra functionality to components. In terms of state, the use state is the most useful as it allows us to manage and update state within a component. That is not subjective. This is objectively the most useful thing here. The use state hook provides us convenient ways to declare and update variables within functional components. And here's how it works. I need to start a React project, and I'm not going to do it the Jordan way because we've changed this. So I'm going to do it the way that y'all have been taught how to do it. Hopefully, if I'm not out of date here. I need to pause for a second. No, I think oh yeah, sure, Byte project. Oh my Lord. All right. I'm just following the prompts, y'all. We're gonna do this 100 times. So, and if you don't remember, I didn't remember either. npm create Vite at latest. This creates this boots up Vite of the latest version. We then choose that we want to use React, we want to use JavaScript, things like that. Then I just follow the prompts, tell it what I want, tell it what to name it, and there we go. Oh, what was the last thing it told me to do? npm run dev. That's right. Change. I was used to using npm create React app. This is a lot faster. So we're going to use this. Open it up. Come on. There we go. Hey, Vite plus React. What? Some of my code there already? What's going on here? Did it not pull everything out yet? Oh my goodness. How did this get in here? All right, whatever. Interesting. I must have left something laying around. Okay, we're just ahead of class. That's all right. So we start a blank. Ignore this. I really don't know how this got in here. That's interesting. Creating a blank React app. Everything is what you should see, except for this bit. I'm so confused. That's okay.
That was there yesterday
Oh,
as well.
was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's default by that Vite.
No way. That is so cool. I thought, I copied the interesting, like exactly how I did it myself. Interesting. Well, I was gonna copy paste it in there, but we don't need that if we're using Vite. All right. So declare state, use state hook takes an initial value as an argument and returns an array with two values, the state variable and a function that updates the state variable. This is very important. If you want to create a state variable, if you want something that is state, you got to do it like this. You can't just const count and set it to 0. That won't trigger updates. Also, if you have created state, you must use the set to update it. If you don't, that is modifying state directly, and it's not going to trigger an update, and it's going to fork your stuff up. What is Jordan talking about? I need to get out of this. Open it up. start fresh, no old stuff. Here we are. I still don't like VS Code. Okay. App.jsx. Here we are. So count is the variable or the state variable. I don't know if state variable is proper, but before we start just referring to it as state, I don't want to think of it like a variable, but we're treating it as state. This is creating it. You've got an array, and then we have set count. Set count is the provided function that we're going to use to modify state, right? This here, use state, this is the default. This is where we're starting. So what this would look like in regular old, JavaScript, if you were going to do it, would be this. It'd be const count is equal to 0, right? That's the same thing as this. The difference is changing this one is not going to trigger updates to the DOM. Changes to this one will, if we use this function built here. So just get in the habit of that. Don't mess this up. This is really hard to track down if you broke it, and it's going to make things look really, really weird. You'll get weird. I don't want to go into all the weird things that could be caused by mutating state directly, but we don't mutate state directly. You use set and then the name. I think this truly could be whatever you wanted it to be, but it is conventional and correct for whatever the state is, set state is what you're going to use. So what is going on here? Access and update state. So referring to state is count, accessing it or updating it, we use set count. We now can access our state variable count and use it in our components code. You can display it anywhere in your component. To update the state, you can use the update function you just created, set count in this case. This function accepts a new value as arguments and updates the state variable. So let's see how they are doing this and see if I like that. Yeah, I do like that. We got a bunch of junk in here. It's all cool. It's all clean. It's getting in the way though. And let's peel some of this out. Still working. Ow. Did I stop it? Yeah, I sure did. Nope. Are they still here? Oh. Cool beans. All right, that cleans it quick. So what is going on here? We have, sorry, I'm trying to change gears, but I want to make sure we're doing it via Vite and not via install. So we've got a button here and it's telling you what the count is. And when we click it, it's going up. That's cool. That is a state change. Here's the button. We have given it an on-click method. And this is the syntax you want to use. Basically, this is saying when clicked, run this anonymous function, bind it to set count, like this. And the basically what it's going to be set to is count plus 1. You could accomplish this different ways that are less complicated, but this is like the conventional way to get it done. Pretty sure you could do that. But what this is doing is it's invoking set count and saying, hey, take count plus 1, and that is what you're going to be setting it as. So it's running set state count plus 1. That is updating count, which was 0, now it's 1. And because state has been set, because it's been changed, because it's been modified, mutated, augmented, it is going to rerun this function here And that's why it's updating immediately. Also, to display it on the page, to template it in, we wrap it in curly braces, just like this. So the sentence, which is within button, right? Here's the opening tag of button. Here's the closing tag of button. This is what's inside of button. Count is count. Just to show you, this is really it, right? That's that. That's within this button. The count is 4. And as we continue to iterate through it, it's calling set count, iterating this, adding 1, triggering a reload, and the button is then displaying the new value. That is, by the way, only within the realm of this DOM that's created right here. I'm going to refresh this page and it's 0 again. Even though this file, didn't change, we're not saving that anywhere. That's not really even being saved. It's just being saved in the DOM, the instance of that DOM. As soon as you refresh, it's gone. That is the thing about state. If you change it and you go to a different page and you come back, if that DOM had to be re-rendered for any reason, state is going to be rewritten. So we have to find ways to pass things forward, pass things back smartly. We can write to the database if it's that important. A lot of times, and we'll get into this, I think Thursday, and definitely by Saturday, is props, where I can take a state change, pull reference a component and send a bunch of information to that component. So the component takes things in, but we're not getting all into that. But that's how you would pass information on through props, which is not today. Today, we're just talking about state and conditional rendering. So we've got this variable. We've got state. We're not calling it variable anymore now that I've joined those things together. We've got state. And we know when you change it properly, it re-renders the DOM. We can conditionally render things other than that, right? We don't just have to display state. We can do other things besides just seeing this count number go up. We're still in JavaScript. We still can use logic. So we can conditionally render. I added this in here. This is another way you do pretty much the same thing, but conditional rendering. Do we have any questions about what's happening to this point? This is about the most complicated thing we're going to deal with.
I'm just curious as to why the count in the bracket is actually displaying the count without like backticks. Maybe my JavaScript is shaky, or is it just how it is and the button that's causing that?
Yeah, this isn't JavaScript here. This is JSX, meaning this bit in here is JavaScript. This is JSX. Anything I put within braces, curly braces, is JavaScript. So I could probably, I don't think this works, but this is what you're saying. You're like, it should look like that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're referring to it. We don't have to do that because when we wrap it in curly braces, we're saying, hey, I know you're reading HTML, yada yada HTML. Oops, stop. This is some JavaScript. This is just like when we put, at some point in the course, we would use Jinja to interact with HTML. This is kind of the same thing. This is saying, hey, run some JavaScript in here. And because this bit in here between button is a display, just like if I wrapped a p tag here, this is a display. It's saying between these two tags, print something to the screen. It's going to read this and then say, oh, wait, what's this again? And we're saying, hey, in JavaScript, this is the variable count. What is count equal to? At this point, 0 or 1. So it goes to JavaScript, says, hey, what is count, by the way? And JavaScript responds with, oh, count is a variable, it's equal to this. So the HTML side of this is reading it as the count is 0.
Okay, makes sense.
Jordan, I have a question about the state, use state.
Yes.
So in the brackets, you have count and then you have set and then camel case count. If you change set to set X, would it still update like normal?
You're saying if I did like this?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
the
it's
match.
going to, I think it's gonna yell at us. However, I think
I
this
think you can
works.
change that to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, I'm thinking you can too. I'm thinking it might yell at us, but no, still works.
I think you're
So-
just destructuring um that use state.
Right. I was just curious. Yeah.
Yep.
Once you change the variables for both, it should work. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
it
yep.
just cares about the position, the argument in there. Pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah. This is just defining, this is defining state. This is defining a function to change state. It could be whatever you want to. However, very conventional to set state or correction, create a state variable, and then set would be how you update that. This is something we can pass forward and always call back to this original state. But yeah, they are just variables. You can
That
call them
makes
whatever you
sense.
want to.
No, you were just saying like for conventionally, you have to, it makes more sense to call. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, yep. But
And then
I love. Go ahead.
since onClick is like an anonymous function in this case, but like let's say you had an input block and you had it just like I don't remember the word is not onClick, but just like anytime it was like updated, could you pass that in through like you pass it in the first parentheses and then you can use that variable as well in the function? I'm guessing that would probably work just fine.
Yeah, just like any other old function, we could pass in information here to be used down the line here. We start getting fairly complicated with our templating and stuff, but yeah, you can definitely like break all of this stuff out any way you would normal like JavaScript. Gets a little hairy when you're multi-lining it, but that's what JavaScript developers love to do. So don't be afraid to do that. I think they just like write it out like, oh my God, no one will ever be able to read this. Like, oh, you're so smart. Oh, so good. That's like how my buddy is when he's like, look, guys, I shrunk all this down. Like, man, I knew what it did before you touched it. Now I have no clue what's happening. But yeah, that is something you can do and we will be doing. I'm just ranting. Conditional rendering. So we can change things on the page, but we can also change the way the page interacts. Notice all this DOM is being served to us through a return, which exists within this function here. All this land up here, all line 8, this bit right here. This is the Wild West. This is JavaScript. This is regular old JavaScript. We do whatever we want. Like, keep that in mind. Don't get caught up around any of this. This is still just JavaScript going on here. We can do whatever we want, meaning this return is subject to whatever the heck we want to do with it. So we can return this conditionally to prove that I'm not lying. And that really does show up there. Hello, Jordan. There it is. There it's at. Shows it to me twice. Cool things. Keep that in mind because that's what we're going to be doing next. So, conditional rendering. Now that we've explored the power of use state, hook, and managing state with functional components, let's move our focus to another crucial aspect of React development, conditional rendering. Use state hook allows us to store and update dynamic data within our components. However, what if we want to selectively display or hide components based on certain conditions? Yada, yada, regular old JavaScript. Let's copy paste. I'm going to have to pull over some of this stuff. Let's see. How do we want to run this? We're actually going to wipe out all of this for right now. Not all that, all this. And, oh man, is that not? Why did those not get updated? That's interesting. Oh, well, I'll just use my own example for this because it wasn't even supposed to be in there. So what this is going to do, get rid of this junk. Basically, if condition return some component, if condition 2 other component, otherwise default component. What does that look like realistically? here, we've got count and we can update it, no problem. But if we wanted to return different components rather than, all of this, y'all worked on components yesterday, we could instead provide components, instead or within here. Let me pull something over real fast so that this works. And I don't think y'all don't trust me, and this should work the way I say it is, but I want to at least. Here. Cool beans. We've got these real simple basic components here. Component one, it's just going to be div h1 component one, div 2, div 3. Easy to understand, but I do want to show you that it does work the way we kind of expected. We're not going to be able to rate count doing this example, but we're going to be able to just set the default kind of here. So if I had the count state set to 1, we would expect to be able to conditionally render it like that, with one exception. I still need to import these in at the top. So this is how you'd import those in. Mad about something, are you? Looks happy enough. Oh. I'll pause here a second. I just want to make sure I don't. Is that too high?
Is this supposed to be .js or .jsx? Or am I sure?
Well, these are JS. Interesting. Let's see what happens if I do it that way. All right, let me pause real quick, see what I broke. Recording again. Pay attention to these trees, even if they don't make sense to you because your brain doesn't work that way. That was our issue. I had components outside of the source folder. So we got component 1, 2, and 3 being imported in from this components folder. Real simple, easy to understand. I need to update those in a second. But with count being set to 1, when this function, when app runs, it's going to walk through these if-else statements. If the count is 1, it's going to return this component, which is just saying component 1. It sure is. As we update, make any changes to that for any reason, you wouldn't obviously be doing this directly, but just showing that this stuff is working the way we expect it to. If I do 4, notice no matching components because that is our else statement here. That's kind of logical conditional rendering. There's a lot of ways to conditionally render, by the way, y'all. We were talking about 3 here. My buddy gave a talk on conditional rendering in React, and he came with like a list of like 15 weird ass ways to do that. Don't get too fancy. Yeah, he's a JavaScript developer. He thinks that stuff's cool. And some people thought it was cool, but it seemed like a lot. Ternary operators, those work too. Let's throw this in there. So rather than, running logic like this, you can directly within here, and probably the way you're probably, more likely going to do this, set up a bunch of different returns. You will have conditional rendering within your return within the DOM. So where should we put this? Just toss it in here. Oh wait, that return is going to get forked. It's going to be a bad example. Welcome banner is not defined. Oh, that's right. So I'm using two more components that I still haven't brought in, so I'm going to do those now. And do it properly the first time. There we go. I know that's messy. Let's get rid of some of the junk. Cool. So what is going on here? We have a variable. This could be state. It could be really anything. It could be props. It could be referencing a token. Doesn't really matter. I just want to show you that we can use ternaries to conditionally render components in this manner, right here, right within the code. So this ternary, if y'all remember that, is signed in. If it's true, we'll be providing a welcome banner. If it's not, we'd be using a sign-in prompt. That's cool. That makes a lot of sense, right? And that's some interesting rendering we can do, and a good way to lock your website down. Basically, well, there's a lot of ways to direct somebody back out of the website if they're not signed in, but to keep it real simple, if someone is signed in, you can conditionally render information that is available to them. And depending on maybe their access, you could conditionally render different things on the page. Maybe if they were admins, you would have an admin banner running at the top, things like that. Again, our welcome banner is simple, welcome in. This is the welcome banner. If we weren't, we'd have a little sign-in prompt, take us somewhere. Maybe have a form right here. Do really whatever you want, or what have you. But that's how you do it with ternaries. Lastly, and logical operator. Remember in JavaScript, ampersand is saying, it's basically like using and in Python. If this is true, conditionally render this. Because this is also truthy. Again, sure. Some people might think this is cool. It's just the same way to do the same kind of things, but this is kind of the same as the ternary. Still works the way you'd expect it to. I think. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, because it's false right now. We're not providing anything else. So keep that in mind. It can't register. It's not going to provide anything if we give it no other options. Because the only thing I'm doing here on this page is rendering the welcome banner if we're signed in. If we're not signed in, it wouldn't render anything. Watch out for that. Watch out for dead ends in React, and watch out for not rendering anything for the user that they can use. But if you didn't want another option, if you didn't want to provide anything like a ternary, you would have to say, or give them this. This is what we could do instead. Does that make sense? Seems like a lot of hoopla, but React tickles your brain in really interesting ways. And the deeper you kind of get into it, and the more you understand these basic tools like conditional rendering and state, you can kind of create some really interesting components. You can save yourself a lot of work, save yourself a lot of code. And I don't know, you find like really efficient, smart ways to interact with the user rather than send them to a new page every single time, right? Like in Django, you had a page and you had a page and you had a page, and you had to have a page written for basically everywhere you wanted to send them ever. In React, we feasibly could never change pages. We could just keep updating things in the page to interact with them really any way we want to. I wouldn't use React to build a game, but if you were going to create a game, a lot of these kind of tools would be interesting because it's just going to persist while you're on the same page. No navigation required at all, just changing components at all times. That's what React's all about. And React's also all about rendering virtual DOM with JSX. That's what separates it from I know some of its competitors, I guess. Cool. Any questions? I don't like switch cases because they don't work in Python properly. I don't know. Are they in Python now? We'll stop recording.